You're listening to Secrets for Scaling, a Gecko Board podcast that explores the growth secrets of successful founders and CEOs. For this episode, we spoke with Jon Crawford, founder and former CEO of Storenvy. Hi, Jon. Welcome to Secrets for Scaling.
Hey there.
To kick things off, you're the founder and former CEO of Storenvy. For some context, can you tell us a bit about what Storenvy is, who their customers are, and what their business model is?
Sure thing. So Storenvy is an e-commerce platform for very small indie retailers. And so it lets you set up your own online store that lives at your own website. It looks like your own website. You can use your own URL. It's like the easiest way to do that, and it's completely free. And then anything that you put into your store is also in the big Storenvy marketplace. It's a way to get discovered, but also a way to like have your own professional looking storefront. And people have compared it to kind of being the Tumblr of e-commerce, where you get your own website. It could be a blog if it's Tumblr, or an online store if it's Storenvy. And then you also get to be a part of a big network and get socially discovered. All the content is actually socially curated by the shoppers. So it kind of works like Reddit, where the kind of latest and greatest is pushed up to the top. And as things age, they kind of get pushed down the list. If you're a merchant, it's completely free to set up your store in the first place. And then if you want to add features like using your own URL or giving out coupon codes or sending emails to your user or your customers, you can pay monthly for stuff like that. There's some advertising tools you can pay for. And then on the marketplace side, if we make a sale for you there that you wouldn't have made on your own because they came to our site, then Storenvy keeps 10% of the selling price. So you only pay when we make you money.
And who are the customers on the other side of the marketplace?
That's really diverse because there's millions of products. And so you've got people, there's a lot of fashion, a lot of younger fashion. So, I never knew when I started this thing that I'd be catering to teenage girls, but that turned out to be a big part of the product that got uploaded by merchants is fashion for younger girls. But, we have a lot of stay-at-home mom customers, crafters. There's a lot of bands on the site. So there's, people who are already a fan of the band finding us from Google. It's really, really broad. So it's actually very hard to summarize what it is, other than to say it kind of skews younger and fashion oriented.
How big is Storenvy today?
So let's see. So I sold it last year, and now I am a little out of touch with the metrics. But when I left, like at our biggest, we were like 30 people, millions of dollars a month flowing through the platform. 130,000 stores were open. I mean, it was pretty meaningful, and it was fun to bump into people that had heard of it and stuff like that. We had parties at this fashion trade show in Las Vegas twice a year. That was really cool. So I'd say medium.
Can you tell us a bit about your background, what you did before founding Storenvy, when it launched, how long you were there, and all of that?
Well, I'm an engineer. And I kind of became a CEO out of necessity. And self-taught engineer, I taught myself to code right after I graduated from college in 2004. Then literally 3 months later, I started making websites with a designer friend of mine for money. And, we started a web design shop, and I spent like 3 years doing that in Kansas City. And through that period of time, I had built a whole bunch of online stores for very small sort of mom and pop businesses that all didn't understand the complexity of e-commerce, and were paying me $8,000-$10,000 to build them something from scratch. And that's why I kind of got annoyed that there wasn't something that felt like the consumer internet, which in 2008 was just budding still. Facebook was only 4 years old. And so I just set out to sort of solve this pain point that I saw, which was sort of e-commerce being inaccessible and opaque and complex. Kind of everything I did sort of led up to founding Storenvy. Everything I did post-college all the way up to founding the company.
So how did Storenvy come to be?
I had built, like I said, a bunch of online stores for really small businesses. And one of those was a record label in Florida that found me through a friend of a friend of a friend, I think. And they wanted a system where they could push a button and make a new store when they added a new band or something. And so I thought about it, and I was like, sure, I can definitely do that. And so I built the whole thing from scratch, and I did maintenance on it off and on for like a year. And then the guy who was operating that they, were paying to like actually run the platform. And I cooked up the idea of maybe we could make it work for, a bigger audience, and took it to the record label, and they just were like, nah, like we want to focus on Creed. I think they were managing Creed at the time. And so, I could see how that would be your main focus. And so we just kind of were like, okay, well, maybe we could just do this ourselves. Oddly enough, he told them that he was going to work on this and wanted to leave his job. And then they were like, okay, well, then we're going to shut down this platform. And then we just emailed the 50 bands and t-shirt companies on their platform and said, hey, do you still want a store in 2 months because it's going away? And they were like, yes. And so we launched with their merchants, basically.
Nice.
We had 50 stores and businesses just on day one.
And what year was that?
It was 2009, I think.
What are you up to now?
I just got to level 7 on Witcher 3 on Xbox One. I'm pretty proud of. No, but honestly, I overdid it majorly in this startup founder role. I was by myself through some really, really challenging things. Many, many challenging things spread out over a long period of time. And I just burned myself out. So I've taken almost the last year off. And I have been a little bit productive, where I've traveled to a bunch of cities all over the world and mentored close to 50 startups, and also given speeches and presentations. But I've also just been kind of like recouping. But now that it's been a year, I am starting to think about what's next. And I'm open to a lot of different things. I'm open to joining a founding team this time instead of having to be the head honcho. I'm open to starting something. I of course have a million ideas that I've written down and fleshed out. I'm not sure what I'm going to do next.
I would love to hear more about some of those challenges, like what the toughest parts were and how you overcame them.
Well, you're assuming that I overcame them. So it's kind of become, I've observed that it's become kind of startup culture lore, the story of me getting kicked out of Y-Combinator. People have told this story to me, and I'm like, that's about me. But I got kicked out of Y-Combinator on the first day, and in order to get that full story, it's kind of a long tale. Just it's on my blog. It's been covered a lot. But so that was tough, because then I just didn't have any funding, and I didn't have anybody to help me work on it, and I just decided to put my head down and ended up raising $1.5 million 6 months later from top tier VCs. But then, there were crazy, raising the Series A was nearly impossible, just because it oftentimes is. And we had less than $10,000 left in the bank with 8 employees when I finally got the 30th VC to say yes, and got $5 million more to keep the lights on. The mistake I made there is we had good metrics. We had good growth. Everything was good, but we'd only focused on the store builder half, and we hadn't launched the marketplace as I saw it. Yeah, there was a little bit of stuff there where you could browse, but my vision for the marketplace hadn't launched yet. And I'd already started my team working on it, and we had it was a couple months out before we were going to launch it. And so every smart VC was like, we love it. This business is really cool. We like your vision. We like how much you've gotten done with very little resources. We can't wait to see what is going to happen when you launch the marketplace, so come back when you do. And so what I learned is that you cannot walk into an investor pitch with a card that you're about to flip over. They will wait until it's flipped over. They want to know. They don't like the mystery. So it would have probably been better for me to not even mention the marketplace, and to just talked about the vision for where I wanted to take the products that were already launched. But having this new thing that was going to completely double the size of the product offering and focus on a different customer base, that was too much mystery to get people forward leaning in a Series A conversation. And unfortunately, Intel Capital got it and saw the vision and was willing to take the leap.
During that time, I'd like to take a step back and talk about building the team a bit. How did the team structure change and evolve during the time you were there?
So I've never worked in an organization, so I didn't really know what the hell I was doing. I'm a pretty quick study in terms of being able to read things and look at org charts and talk to people, but I never knew what one was supposed to feel like. from inside it. And so I got this wrong pretty much every single attempt, and I attempted it like 3 times. So in the early days, my hiring practice was I really wanted to build like a cool culture, like a cool place to work. Back in like, 2008 or 9 or 10, one of the coolest places to work in San Francisco was Dig. And I saw like goofy videos that those guys were making and all kinds of stuff. And, I wanted to create that because I kind of thought it was on brand because we were this like funky fashion thing, the everyman. And so I just tried to hire cool kids, and not just like because they were cool, like they had good music taste, but like they had a following. They were they were like a popular designer that had, people admired, or they'd done like funky projects. And I wasn't really like interviewing for culture fit or like how good of a team member they are, or how cooperative, or how well do they compromise, or what's their design process like. And so, to be honest, I hired 2 or 3 guys that seemed great on paper, and we never really shipped anything. And at one point, I let the entire team go all on the same day. I think 3 or 4 people, because I could just see that we'd already blown through 500K of our 1.5 million, and we had accomplished nothing. And I really didn't want to do that, but I knew that we were definitely going to fail if we kept going down this path. So I might as well at least try another path, even though I had fought so hard and even paid to move people, and I'd fought so hard to get these people in the room and create like a place they would want to work. But I knew we were going to fail. So I just had to sort of like consider that all sunk costs, and I had to reboot the team. So that, we created a toxic culture together of sort of distraction and procrastinating and also not necessarily using any processes to get to the right answers. And honestly, no org chart design can teach you how to teach people. So that was my biggest problem, is that I'd been a one-man show, a jack of all trades for so long, and I had been doing it all by myself. I knew how our tweets should sound. I knew how the design needed to feel. I knew where that bug probably was based on, just looking at the behavior. Like I had all the code memorized. I knew how our customer support email voice should be. And so when I brought new people in, like they were at a bit of a home court disadvantage because they were playing on my turf, and I knew how to do their job better than them. And I had never had to teach people how to think about their work before. I could maybe teach them exactly what to do, but not how to think or how to solve problems the way the company would solve problems. I would swoop in and just give them the solution, which is, the natural thing you'd think people would need. Well, that doesn't make for a very productive team or very motivated employees. So I had to learn how to teach the sort of how and the why, and let people come up with the what. And that took a long time.
What resources, if any, did you go to figure out how to teach them the how and the why?
I hired an executive coach, like a really good one. And I had met him through an organization I'm a part of called Summit Series. And he and I would meet once a week. If you find the right executive coach, it turns out to be a mixture between sort of like professional therapy and coaching on how to do stuff well. And so one thing that he talked to me about time and time again is that founders create cultures that feel like their home family dynamic. And I grew up primarily with a single mom, and I'm the oldest child. And so I kind of created like a single mom environment at my company for a long time, where I was doing everything. Everybody was looking up to me, and I felt kind of like a parent, and versus necessarily feeling like, I could step away and trust that the wheels were going to be headed in the right direction. I felt like I, had to be supervising every single thing. And, I think to a degree I did, because I don't think I had figured out for the longest time how to equip people to be able to make good decisions when I wasn't there. So that's one thing that I figured out through executive coaching, among many, many other things.
You built a team. It didn't work out. And then you tried again and got a coach to help. What happened after that?
So one thing I found out I'm good at, I'm great at recruiting. At one point, I poached the creative director from Eventbrite. and she came to be my creative director, which was, a huge deal. And, some other really big wins like that. And ultimately, I had 6 directors reporting directly to me, and then everyone else reported to them. And so that changed my role significantly, because I was used to like writing Ruby on Rails still, and helping the designers like build stuff or design stuff. And this was managing managers, which is a whole different animal. And I wouldn't say it's my favorite thing to do. So if I were to do this exact same thing again, I would put a lot more effort into finding an operations person or a president, somebody to just make sure that the ships are running on time, and let me sort of float around onto the actual product team a lot more.
Since you did have to serve as that manager or managers, was there anything you did to make that process easier for you, especially since you didn't really love the process?
No. No. I mean, I did things that I think I was supposed to do that were good, like one-on-ones. A lot of people don't do one-on-ones with every single team member. You got to do one-on-ones, because like one of the best quotes that I ever heard was from Ev Williams, founder of Twitter. Somebody asked him at a conference or something, what would you do differently? And he said, I talk about the vision a lot more, because everybody on your team, if you mention the vision to them, they'll say like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, I do kind of remember that. But they're not thinking about it all day long like you are. And they're thinking about the JavaScript bug or whatever it might be. So you have to reiterate this vision to them over and over and over. And the same goes with they'll see your face at all hands meetings. Like they're sitting there, in chairs looking up at your slides or whatever, but they don't feel connected to you, or they might be like struggling with like feeling frustrated in their job or not liking their work or something. And they won't come to you without you going to them first in a lot of cases. So you really have to make time to do one-on-ones with people. Seems obvious, but 10-person teams are just like, going a million miles an hour, and they oftentimes don't make time to do that stuff, and you really have to.
Are you still doing one-on-ones at the very end before you left?
Yeah, I was doing one-on-ones with my managers once a week, but then less often with people that worked under them, but still giving people my time to voice their concerns to me or whatever it was.
Were the managers then doing one-on-ones with their team members, though? Okay. And then I'd imagine reporting back to you.
Yeah, and if they told me I needed to meet with somebody, I would do that.
Tell us a bit about selling the company and your exit, and how you knew it was time to sell.
Yeah, I mean, I knew it was time to sell when the focus of my day-to-day was no longer innovation, and it was optimization. So it was maintenance. So I came here to Storenvy to make something accessible that was inaccessible, make something clear that was opaque, make something simple that was complex. And we got to the point where all of our day-to-day was like re-implementing PayPal's new thing, or shipping label printing, or helping people like make sure that they get tracking information when they place an order, or fighting credit card fraud. Oh my God, that one took so much time and energy. So fighting credit card fraud is not what I came here to do.
Right.
And so when I stopped doing what I felt like was new, sort of top of the pyramid innovation stuff, that's when I was like, okay, I've been doing this for like 6 or 7 years, at the time 6 years. I'm ready to work on some of my other ideas.
Are there any big lessons from the selling process you'd like to share?
It's easier and harder than people think. A lot of people have asked me, like, how do you sell the company? Well, you literally just have to let people know you're for sale. Now, I mean, ideal situation is someone makes an offer to buy you when you're not trying to sell. That's the best. But that's usually, you're like blowing up, or you have some strategic advantage, or your revenue is just insane. And ours was pretty good, but it wasn't insane. And because we were too new. I mean, we could have raised more money and kept going, but I just didn't want to anymore. I literally just emailed like 10 people. And we're like, hey, I'm thinking about making a change and doing something. And like, we're starting to talk to some people. We've already had one offer, like, but I wanted to give you guys a chance because I think you're potentially a better fit. And we just got on the phone and talked. So, I mean, you obviously always want to have more than one offer on the table. So you got to talk to multiple people at once. But it's really a matter of just like shooting off emails with bullet points and trying to figure out how it's a good idea for them and positioning it that way and trying to, create a sense of scarcity so that they feel like if they say no, they might miss out and regret it later. It's really similar to raising venture capital.
A really good point is that you just didn't want to anymore. And I'd imagine that like coming to grips with that is a tough one, but also really important to just kind of listen to what your gut is telling you.
Yeah, I mean, entrepreneurship is really exciting, but at some point you pile so much on top of yourself that it feels like a burden rather than an adventure. And I don't want to be that. I don't want to live that way. One of the most rewarding things for me from founding and growing and selling Storenvy is just I figured out how to like optimize my life to where I just like living it instead of it being like this constant chasing something or constantly feeling like I had to sacrifice for something. And I just wasn't living my best life or wasn't extremely happy. And so, get the hell out and figure out how to maybe start another company that's more optimized for just founder happiness.
It's actually a great segue. You have a lot of founder experience under your belt now, and you've been working with some startups. What's the most important piece of advice you'd give to founders who are just beginning to scale their business?
Well, I actually just gave a talk about this in Turkey last month. I have no idea if it's the most important, but it is the most concise. And it's also the one that I see that it seems like everyone needs. And that is the idea of understanding your own value and what value you're trying to create in people's lives and sort of on what value are you competing. Part of that is, some people call it the iron triangle, but it's really the idea of good, fast, cheap, pick two. So I see a lot of companies that are trying to be a better solution, which, like a faster, easier solution that's more elegant and also cheaper. If you can do all three of those, awesome. But the reality is it's really hard to do it's really hard to be better, faster, and cheaper than the competition. So you really need to pick two. This came out of the agency work, like ad agency world, where it was like, okay, if you want it good and fast, it's not going to be cheap. You want it cheap and good, it's not going to be fast, et cetera, et cetera. What I've seen is like you take Uber, that's a ride that's good and fast, but like the black car, it's not cheap. That's the whole idea. Oftentimes that third one is your business model. And so the reality is if you feel like you have to be all three, then the two that you really should be are probably not strong enough, and you should focus on being as good as possible at two of those and not trying to compete on all three fronts. And we got this wrong at Storenvy for a while because we were trying to be faster and easier and obviously free, but then we were like worried about not having as many features as like all these big guys. Well, that wasn't the game we were playing. We were trying to play their game instead of trying to play our game. We should have just been fast and cheap and let the other guys worry about being good or high quality for like the people that needed a million features.
Last question, and it's kind of an obnoxious one, but what are you most excited about today?
Let's see here. Coachella? I felt so glued to work for 7-8 years where I mean, like, the people in my life were annoyed at how much I was looking at my phone. My health went really downhill. Like, ever since I started coding, I gained like 50 pounds, which I've since lost. But, I'm excited about letting work serve me versus serving work. I'm excited about fleshing that out as I sort of put my nose back down to the grindstone in some way. That is definitely a lesson I had to teach myself. For some reason, growing up, I got the opposite message, and, it's not anybody's fault. It's just that's what my childhood did, is gave me this idea of like sacrifice and hard work, which is important, but it should serve you versus the other way around.
Well, with that, I think it's a great spot to wrap up at. Thank you so much for talking to us today.
You bet. Thanks for having me.